Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, rolling out hour number 2. Sharp and Shapiro, so glad you could join us. Michael sticking around in studio as well. And, it's always great when we have, whether it's a former presidential candidate, a former governor. We love talking to politicians, in the past, in the future. And John Kasich is one of those that I have a tremendous amount of respect for many reasons that we are going to talk about. He's got a new book out. It's called It's Up to Us, 10 Little Ways We Can Bring About Big Change. The former governor joining us right now on the line. John Kasich. John, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
You're very welcome, Brian. Very welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
so
thanks a lot, John.
Let me start by saying this and talking to you about this. You're one of the few Republicans out there that has spoken out in regards to Donald Trump wrongdoings. You have a backbone, John. Why is it that you think that there are so many Republicans out there that refuse to even admit what Donald Trump said to the president of the Ukraine was at the very least, maybe not even impeachable, but wrong? Why do you think that is?
Well, I held up a chart last night, a little triangle, that explains exactly what happens, not just to Republicans, but Democrats as well, whenever the heat is on, and that is that party at times can be the most important factor in how a representative, how they react to things. And then you also have the public. And if the public is consistent with the party, then, the party dominates. But if the public begins to say, no, we don't like this, and they come in conflict with the party, then the public begins to be ascendant. And, of course, at the end of the day, there's also what's called conscience. And you have to decide, whether, what your most important reason is for having held public office. I am not somebody that tries to get in somebody's head. I may have private feelings about it, but I don't really try to express them and judge other people. I think you got to ask them. And the question is, why are they saying what they're saying? Is it because their conscience tells them that? Is it because the political party pressures them? Is it because the public says you've got to be a good Republican? I mean, those are the things you have to think about. And that's kind of a political science textbook approach. But, I think it's the reality that affects all politicians.
John, you were up there on that stage. You ran for president. You were up there a few feet away from Donald Trump. If anybody knows what it would take to defeat the president in 2020, you would know. What would be your advice to Democrats? How do you defeat Donald Trump?
Well, it's basically kitchen table issues. It's the talk about your better plan for health care, your better plan for the issue of wages and education. I mean, it's kitchen table issues. And if, in fact, the Democrats run somebody who skewers hard left, and you're beginning to see them move away from that, I think Trump's likely to win re-election. I can't predict that, but it makes it easier for him to win. If it's somebody who's more moderate, because the country is essentially center-right and center-left. Mm-hmm. And if you get way out, whether on the right or on the left, it just doesn't work. And so, but it's not about Donald Trump. It's about your view of how you can help families, because everybody isn't sitting around at night worrying about what the heck's going on with Donald Trump.
Sure. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with John Kasich, former governor of Ohio, former presidential candidate. His new book is out. It's Up to Us, 10 Little Ways We Can Bring About Big Change. Let's talk about the media for a second, John. I really enjoyed your show on Fox News that ran 2001 to 2007. So you're the perfect person to ask this question. When you look at CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News and the differences, even when you talk about the headlines yesterday, you had CNN that put up the headline, quid pro quo. Someone says there's a quid pro quo. And then if you turn on Fox News, it's the opposite of that. The headlines are completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Don't you think that is dangerous for America?
No, I think what's dangerous for America is when people just don't shop around, when they get themselves stuck in a silo and only absorb that they agree with. Anybody that's running a media operation, just like you guys having a radio show, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
It's just that I think it's important. It's one of the lessons of my book, because my book is really a handbook of how to get your personal power back and stop worrying about all this political stuff. is get out of your own silo. Be willing to listen to people that don't agree with you or to absorb information that is different than what your preconceived ideas may be. So, my approach is try to sample everything. Sort of like when you get your candy for Christmas, there's an assortment of things. So, do some assorting.
Mm-hmm. So, Governor Michael here, let me ask you this question. What do you think the deadline is for the Republicans as it relates to deciding whether they're really going to ride the Trump horse all the way to the 2020 general election? When do you think the Republicans have to decide that?
Well, I think they pretty well decided it so far. I mean, anything is possible in the future, but that's kind of the way I see it. Right now, he's very strong, and I don't see any grounds on which he will not be strong. That could happen, but right now, I don't see it.
Well, let me say this. Let me tell you who I think the Republican nominee should be. I think the Republican nominee should be you, and here's why. You've been a consistent critic of the president for many years. You've been a fighter. You are a fighter. You're pretty good on television. You're not quite as good as I am, but you're pretty good. You've won statewide in Ohio. You can speak to those issues that you raised earlier. I think you would be one hell of a formidable candidate for any of the Democrats were you to run. So here's my question. You wrote this book. It looks like a book written by a guy who's seriously contemplating running for president. So
wait. Did you read the book?
Yeah, I have looked at the book.
Yeah, well, the book has nothing to do with politics.
Well, no, but it has to do with those important issues that you raised. So here's my question. Are you...
No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that either. It doesn't. The book is telling people that instead of focusing all their attention on politics in some faraway places, figure out what you can do locally. How do you slow down and hear your purpose? How do you live a life a little bigger than yourself? Mm-hmm. How do you get out of your own silo? How do you consider your eternal destiny? This is really a handbook for getting your personal power back, and it has not. I mean, it doesn't even talk about politics, and maybe a little bit, but it's 90% about things we learn about life. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the book because I'm not particularly interested in writing anything more about politics. I've written one book about it. It was all right, but I very much like this book because it's different. It's a different book.
Mm-hmm. So, Governor, let me ask you this.
Those kind words, except the trashing you gave me on my television where you claim you were much better. We're going to let the public do a judge off. How's that?
So, Governor, look, I'm a fan of yours. I've always been a fan of yours. We disagree on a number of policy positions, but look, I think you're very effective, and I think you'd be a hell of a presidential candidate in 2020 and likely beyond. But here's my question, point blank. Are you considering running in 2020?
No, not now. I've already announced this about 2 weeks ago. I'm not thinking about it because there's no path. Mm-hmm. As I like to say, when you go hiking, you look for a path to go to, to get up higher in terms of the mountain you're climbing. But if you don't see a path, then you don't try to climb. I've done this before.
Sure.
I don't want to fall down.
Well, I hope a path opens up.
I don't know if there'll be a path, but I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing and who I am and all those kinds of things.
Well, sure. I hope a path opens up because I think the country needs you, Governor.
Well, I think,
nice of you.
And by the way, I agree with that. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with John Kasich, the former governor of Ohio, former presidential candidate. His new book, It's Up to Us, 10 Little Ways We Can Bring About Big Change. Okay, John, let me ask you this question point blank. Based on the information we all have and the evidence that is put forth in these impeachment inquiry hearings, and we're going to get more information, but based on the information we know right now, does this raise to the level of an impeachable offense? What is your opinion with that?
Yeah, I've already said that if I were in the House, I would vote for that because I reached that conclusion after I saw the Chief of Staff say, yeah, we do quid pro quos all the time. And my concern here, of course, is real simple, and that is I don't think that a president can withhold vital military aid for a country like this based on a personal request that involves his political opponents. So But we'll have to see what the House does and how they come forward. But that's the view that I expressed here several weeks ago.
So Governor, obviously you're from Ohio. You've won statewide at least twice in Ohio.
Right.
You served 8 years as governor of Ohio. Ohio is a key state in the presidential election. Winning those key Midwestern states is vitally important. So here's my question. Of the Democrats that are running right now, who do you think gives the Democrats the best shot of beating Donald Trump?
I think it's the candidates that are more towards the center left than somebody who's very extreme. I mean, I think you see Elizabeth Warren beginning to fall now. You got Bernie Sanders still got up ahead of steam, but that's not very practical. So, there are a number of them that are more center left. I mean, you got Biden, you got Klobuchar. I guess the mayor, I don't know enough about him, but anybody who can come across as more reasonable and a problem solver. So, you got to just look at the whole field and see how it develops.
If you're sitting in a room alone with Donald Trump right now and you had an opportunity to speak with him, what would you talk to him about?
Nothing I would tell you on the radio.
That's fair.
I can appreciate your honesty. Do you believe that Donald Trump's presidency has brought out a lot of closet extremists?
I don't want to get into that. I mean, I just don't, guys. That's, I don't like the rhetoric. It's why I didn't endorse him. It's why I haven't supported him. But I also don't engage in personal attacks. I don't believe in that for anybody. I mean, I can think what I want to think, but, it's important what I have. I mean, for me, it's important what I have to say to my friends and family. And I just don't want to live in that place right now.
Sure, and that's totally understandable. Of all the Democrats that I speak with on a regular basis, those of them that say, well, who are the people that you respect the most that were on that stage that were running against Donald Trump? The name I hear is you. Why do you think that is, that there are so many people that have reached across the aisle that have so much respect for a man like you?
Well, I think first of all, it's because I don't name call. Secondly, I'm not trying to be self-righteous, but I have to follow my conscience. And, I can't let that bleed into self-righteousness. We all have that capability, particularly me. I'm willing to work with people on the other side, and I think we need a 21st century agenda on a whole bunch of different issues and think about change. And I'm just not out there. Well, you know what part of it is? I'm sort of in a post-party mood. I happen to be a Republican, but that doesn't dominate my thinking. I'm an American before I'm a Republican, or so maybe that's it. I don't know.
If I could just interject
I can't answer that.
What you just said is so important to me. You're an American before you're a Republican, John. I've said this, and I'll say it again, and you tell me if you agree or not, Governor. I believe the two worst words in this country are Republican and Democrat, because I believe too many of them do what's best for their party and not what's best for the country. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's the triangle. Remember, again, let me see if I can explain this to you a little bit more clearly.
Sure.
So if I'm elected, right, I'm a member of the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, and the party's always trying to get me to follow their line. And then there's the public out there that may have a different view than the party, or maybe sometimes it has the same view as the party. What's happened in America is that the districts have become more and more one party or the other oriented. That's why we need to end gerrymandering, so that one party doesn't dominate a district and people have to listen to people on the other side. When that happens, then the public becomes more important and the party becomes less important. And then in the mix of all of it is conscience. Because when you leave Congress, I was there for 18 years. When you leave Congress, or you leave any political office, at some point you're going to look back and say, what did I do? And if all you can say is that I went to a lot of great party meetings and stuck up for my party, what a waste of time.
Exactly.
To me, it's a waste of time.
Yep.
But there is this pressure all the time to go with the party. And if you don't go with the party, you get heat, or you get cut out of the inner circle. Who cares? Because at the end, I can tell you, having held elected office for 30 years, at the end, all you have is your reputation, and all you have is the way you feel about yourself when you look in the mirror. And not all of us are flawed. Everybody wants to be in the inner group.
Sure.
I was reading this article the other day. This guy got fired because he was on the air and he was attacking Trump, and they walked in, told him he was fired.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that because he went outside the norms of what was expected there?
Well,
I mean, I give the
yeah.
guy a lot of credit. I give him a lot of credit for taking his position. Now he can feel good about himself rather than knuckling under.
Yeah, and we talked about that. We did a story.
The whole business of poison in politics is not just limited to Republicans. This just happens to be the Republican time in the barrel.
Right.
I mean, this is just the way.
Oh, it's both sides. It's both sides. Make no mistake about it. It's both sides. I agree with you 110%.
So, Governor, we are incredibly divided as a nation right now, more so probably than at any point in time, at least over the last, 40 years, 50 years. Here's my question. How about a Biden-Kasich ticket?
Which Biden?
No, but how about Joe Biden and you? I mean, that cross ticket. I mean, I think that'd be unbeatable.
I'll tell you what. First of all, I have a lot of Democrats that come up to me and say, I just really love you. I'm a Democrat and I really love you. Why don't you just stop saying you're a Democrat and just say you like me? But the other part of it is I'm the Democrats' favorite Republican until I'm running against the Democrat. Then all of a sudden, I'm not the great guy they thought I was.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be running against. Yeah, but you wouldn't be running against the Democrat because at that point,
I don't think they would pick me, boys. I don't think they would do that.
Well, I think and I think you're probably right, but I think it bears serious consideration because that would be I'm going to tell you, Governor, that'd be unstoppable, and you would beat Donald Trump. You and Biden would beat Trump, no question.
Okay, I'll let you guys start the campaign. All right? Hey, I got to jump. It's good to talk to you guys.
All right, thank you, Governor. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, listen, for people that are looking for the antidote to all this vitriol, please remember. Can you put it up on your website? It's up to us. 10 little ways we can change the world. And I want to tell you one story before we go.
Sure.
So I was reading about this golfer the other day, and let me tell you, I just talked to him. I called him the other day. He was at a golf tournament down in Argentina.
You're talking about the noise that this mentally. Yeah, go ahead. Yep. Yeah, it's a great story.
So here's this golfer, and he's trying to make one of the tours. He's been doing poorly. He's missed a bunch of cuts in a row, and he's been trying to get on the PGA Tour. Well, he's down there at this tournament. He turned his game around, and here he is in a playoff competing for number one. And if you win, you get to go to the British Open, and it would open up a whole avenue of opportunities for this guy. Well, the guy that he's playing against made a long putt, and all he had to do was make this 8-footer to continue the playoff where he had a chance to win.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of his putting stroke, somebody shouts, and he winces and leaves the putt right on the edge of the hole and loses. And he goes to the scoring tent, and he's in there, and he's upset. The guy walks up to him and said, listen, I want you to know that the person that yelled has Down syndrome. And he looked at the guy and said, where is he? Now, this golfer, Brandon Mathews, his mother had worked with special needs people, and his best friend's sister was a special needs woman. And he went over and met this guy and asked him if he enjoyed the tournament and gave him a big hug and signed a golf glove and gave it to him. And he said, there's a lot more important things than how you do in golf. And I called him because, you see, he changed a part of the world, and people are talking about this because they're so hungry for people who can live a life a little bigger than themselves. And that's really what this book is about. And that Brandon Mathews, he really deserves a great shout out because he obviously is a hero to many people today.
Complete class.
Guys,
yep.
That's what the book's about. Ask your listeners to go ahead and pick up a copy, okay?
John Kasich, I can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you so much.
Right. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you, Governor.
There you go. Former Governor John Kasich, former presidential candidate. I kind of agree with Michael Avenatti a little bit there. I believe if Joe Biden ran and he picked John Kasich as his vice president. Maybe we should start the campaign, Michael.
What are his other options? He can't go too left. If he goes too left, I think he's in serious trouble. But if he goes more center, or even if it is leaning kind of Republican, I think that is a very borderline brilliant strategy to beat Donald Trump.
Michael, do you believe John Kasich when he says he has no aspirations of running?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier in the show, that James Carville's joke that there's only one thing that cures a man's desire to run for the presidency, and that's embalming fluid. And as gracious as John is, and in light of his comments earlier, of course he's thought about it. But his point is that he doesn't see a path. And you've got to have a path. Anyone that is seriously considering running, you got to look at, okay, what is my path? What is my lane? And how does that differ from other candidates? And right now, he doesn't see a path or a lane, largely because the Republican Party has taken steps to make sure that Donald Trump cannot be challenged in 2020. But that could change. If the Republican Party all of a sudden decides, we can't have this guy at the top of the ticket, he may not only cost us the White House, but he could also potentially cost us the U.S. Senate. They'll cut this guy loose quicker than you can imagine. As I've said before, I think they have until March to make that determination. And a lot can change between now and March. They're going to have to make a determination as to whether they're going to really ride that horse or not. And if they abandon him, then the floodgates are going to open, and I think that Kasich will have a lane, and a very wide lane.
Well, and you see what happened with Manafort and with Cohen. When you lie for Donald Trump, you're now doing prison time. You're now a criminal. I think that the fact that those two men that were so involved in Trump's campaign are now behind bars, that's why you're seeing the testimonies that you're seeing now. No one's lying for Donald Trump anymore. Everything is on the surface.
I think Sondland tried to, and then when people around him said, hey, that's probably not a good idea, then he changed his testimony a little bit, and that's what we're seeing. If you're joining us, we have Michael Avenatti in studio. Oh boy, if you think these last few segments were fun, wait till the next segment. Michael Avenatti has a friendship and a relationship with actor and comedian Tom Arnold. Is that right, Michael?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Although sometimes I want to disclaim that, but generally, yes. Generally, that's true.
Well,
I think Tom's a good guy.
I think Tom's hilarious. He's the reason why I bring him up. Guess what? He's joining us next. So I don't know what type of mood we're going to see Tom Arnold in. I don't think he's ever just quiet and laid back.
It's definitely a mixed bag.
It is a mixed bag, but I don't know what type of Tom Arnold we are going to get.
I can assure you he will be entertaining. I can guarantee.
I agree with you there. When we had both of you guys on the air a few months ago, it was must listen to radio. So anyway, Michael Avenatti joining us in studio. We appreciate John Kasich being a class act and joining us, although he didn't like it when Michael said that he might be a little better on TV than John. But that was the only thing that got him a little angry. I know you're
I
kidding.
am better. No, I was somewhat kidding, but I am better.
You probably are. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. Michael Avenatti in studio. Actor-comedian Tom Arnold coming up next. You are listening to The Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.